welcome to Small Business. I'm Dan Murphy. Coming up on today's show, online cloud legal service LawPath, dubbed the Zero of Legal, secures over $1 million in investments. We'll meet the management team turning a small business into a big one. Also today, how low-paying jobs are fueling Chinese graduates' ambitions to start their own firm. And insights on a new SME survey showing the education system is failing to foster Australian entrepreneurs. But first, let's check in with Jacki Mitchell from Taking Care of Business on RPP FM in Melbourne. And Jacki, you've been talking about entrepreneurs and startups on the show this week. What makes a successful entrepreneur?
Yeah, good afternoon, Dan. Certainly a really popular topic and trending as well. And I think it's good to start with some definitions. So there is a difference between a startup and entrepreneur. There is a little bit of overlap, but it's always good to start with the definition. A startup is a company that grows very quickly, grows very fast, so it has the potential for very speedy growth. An entrepreneur, they call them serial entrepreneurs as well, people who like just to start businesses. So they like to start a business and turn it over, where a startup can start a company and be there for 10 years. So a really interesting distinction between the two, but certainly an overlap. And there's been some really fascinating research, and I was picking up on a story earlier. We all hear about this ageing population and how that's affecting the workforce. There's been some empirical research done by Swinburne University of Technology and Queensland University of Technology for the first time to show that over 55s is the fastest growing segment in entrepreneurs. So that's certainly good news for me. There might be some hope in the future there. But it's a really fascinating study, and what it's showing is that Australia is leading the world by 3%. So that means that over the highest amount of people over 55 are becoming entrepreneurs. A quarter of entrepreneurs in the US, for instance, are over 55. So that's higher than the Generation Y. There's been this myth that Gen Y and Gen Z, which is the generation coming through, are the entrepreneurial generation. Well, this research is saying something different. And the other thing that's really interesting, Dan, with this research is that it's also showing that as the government, the Australian government and state governments, have got policies and initiatives supporting younger entrepreneurs, not this senior entrepreneurs or ageing entrepreneur. I don't quite like that. I think it doesn't matter what age you are, anyone can be an entrepreneur. But I think the government needs to look at their policies and procedures. It's certainly ageism that Australia can't afford to have.
Senior entrepreneurs. Jacki, it's just fascinating. Why do you think that's the case? Is it because perhaps those more senior entrepreneurs have the maturity and also the financial backing to get their ideas off the ground?
Yeah, that's part of it. This research demonstrated that 80% of respondents were attracted to the world of entrepreneurs or starting a new business for non-financial benefits. So people over 55, majority, they are more financially secure. They've got increased experience, as you mentioned. They've also got increased management skills. And the other thing that's key, I think, is networks. They understand how to network. They've got good networks. They call on it. They call on their networks for help and contacts. And I think that's making a real difference. But as I said, Dan, I would just like to reiterate, I feel very strongly that they should all be called entrepreneurs and it should not be age-related. But the government needs to look at doing some more policies and initiatives to help support this growing trend. It's a global trend. So Australia is leading this global trend, but we're lagging behind with policies and initiatives to help support this new wave of startups.
It's really, really interesting. Jacki, also tell us, what's the difference between an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur?
Okay, intrapreneur is a term that I've just learnt recently what that meant. I kept hearing it and I wasn't quite sure of the exact meaning. We had an expert on the radio show, Taking Care of Business, and an intrapreneur is someone who works for a company, so they're in-house, be an intrapreneur, and their job is to look at creating innovative products and services, where an entrepreneur works for themselves. So that's a very simple and basic explanation.
All right, Jacki, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
A change of pace.